Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the SLB Show. We are back and Matt's back. Matt, how the devil are you?
I'm very good, mate. Yeah.
Is it still? Are we still able to say Happy New Year?
Yeah, why not? Let's go for it. Happy New Year, Matt. It's still January. Yeah, took a bit of time away. And now I'm back. So yeah, happy to talk stuff. I basically, you're gonna need to catch me up. I've been a bit under a rock for a couple of months, which will be fun or frustrating for the listeners. So we'll see.
Well, with it being a little bit later in the week and with lots going on off the kind of court, we kind of framed this around like the big debate. There's lots going on in the basketball world, lots of stuff that people want to talk about, a lot of people that aren't really sure what's going on. And we had a lot of similar questions on our Instagram story the other day about what does the future of British basketball look like. So we'll debate that and hopefully we address some of your points that you maybe have asked us to bring up. But another one, and it seems to be NBA Europe. Is it progress? Is it a power grab? Is it inevitable? But what does inevitable actually mean? Is it good for everyone? So yeah, that's kind of going to be the starting bit. Obviously, we had the NBA Europe games. They were in Berlin and then they were in London this week. And it's very much been the NBA have rolled out the PR machine. It's very much been, they've rolled out former pros, Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash was rolled out because he was born in the UK. Pau Gasol's been kind of put out. And these are guys that have had long NBA careers and very much part of the NBA engine these days, let's be honest. And obviously we've had the discussion of, or topics of, which football team? And it's that kind of close link of whether or not basketball and football can kind of cross over. Adam Silver also made the comment about basketball being like WWE and like sports entertainment. And that is where I suppose in Europe, sport isn't entertainment, it's sport. So there's loads of kind of strings we can go down and talk about. There's pros and cons, no doubt, for kind of either side. Is NBA Europe going to be the evolution that basketball in Europe needs to kind of go to that next level? Does this, and then another kind of thing we can think about when we frame this whole discussion, or two things, is one, the impact on our SLB, and two, does this whole thing swing massively depending on what Real Madrid do? And we can go on tangents and everything. What are the pros for NBA Europe? Like when we're talking about NBA Europe, how are we saying, what, this is going to be brilliant? I'm currently wearing an NBA hoodie. I've just realized that. So the joke we talk about in our Discord is selling hats. That was all the stuff with GBBL, NBA hats and merch and whatnot. And that is a big part of the British connection to the NBA, I suppose, is that kind of wear the gear, that kind of stuff. That's how it's sold mainstream. But in terms of the sport, Louis, let's start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Try and give me some sort of positive narrative for NBA Europe happening.
Yeah, so from my perspective, like the commercialization of the sport, obviously NBA is a huge commercial body. They have experience in pushing like a very large product to market. You know, I saw an article recently about how the NBA Europe game recently with Grizzlies and Magic, how basically it was a massive commercial event with a lot of sponsors, etc. You know, so in terms of that, especially for the British game, you know, the argument is how they'll translate that to wider Europe, and that's a question. But in terms of Britain especially, kind of creating a more commercial product is definitely going to be like a big ad, you'd think, in terms of NBA Europe. Obviously, types of merchandise, as Grant was saying about NBA hats, that's an extra thing. But because it's about building the sport, obviously, you know, the economy of the sport, making it wider, etc. And obviously with a wider economy, especially for the British game, again, you know, you'd expect a higher caliber of player. So various knock-on effects in terms of like creating or more economizing the sport, practically speaking. That's one positive narrative that can be gleaned from it, you know.
Yeah, I think like one positive of NBA Europe could be more people watch basketball in the UK. Like that would be mint, because there's that element of, you know, a rising tide raises all ships. You know, if more people like basketball, then more people will, you know, get down to their local basketball team, more people get down to the watch a game, more people play the game, more people play the game, the more people will, you know, go and see it, and the better your national team gets, because more people, like 10 years down the line, more people have been inspired by NBA Europe to go along and get involved. And, you know, the national team gets better, and all of this stuff gets better, and you know, and it's just like a self kind of fulfilling, like, sort of cycle of positive stuff going on. Like that's the idealist view, and if that happens, then I think that's obviously great. I was going to go into a negative then, but I think that is a positive. But I'll pause myself.
Does NBA Europe raise then the game to a standard across Europe? Like, I look at it and think, okay, positively, do we get the whole Europe NBA razzmatazz? Like, does that actually, for a modern audience across, okay, when we look at the fact, well, NBA Europe's going to have 16 teams, going to be 12 core teams, with 4 teams able to get in through BCL. And I kind of like that in a way. It's, I know, again, trying to stay off a potential negative tangent straight off it to like bounce off it. But does it then give that, you're talking about that drop down almost effect, whereas we've got these core teams, the 4 teams can get a chance to win in as such. We kind of have that in across European sport anyway, in terms of the Champions League now in football is basically the same teams plus the next cohort, let's be honest. But does NBA Europe bring bigger TV deals across Europe? Does it bring in global basketball sponsorship? We kind of get that a little bit. But does it then allow the top of the game in FIBA to better financially plan? Because when you hear about NBA Europe, the talk is that if it's in terms of the teams in the UK, they want to have 2 teams, Manchester, London. Who they're going to be is going to be interesting, because we've seen, and I suppose we'll touch on it when we go on to the tangent about the teams here, I suppose. But does it bring more money to FIBA to dish out to governing body, or to give to federations to better increase the game? Does player welfare become a better standard? Like, it feels like there's lots of if, buts, and maybes that could actually swing round and be really, really good. And
So I think they could
go.
Sorry.
No,
So
go.
I think there could be, if there's a load of NBA money getting pumped into clubs across Europe,
Yeah.
then there's a possibility that money then gets put into infrastructure to develop talent across Europe. And that is a good thing.
Because if we don't, like, think about it, we have NBA teams in this country. British talent's going to have a pathway to the NBA. Just in that kind of connection. Because if you don't have these elite kind of almost platforms, all our talent's going to leave anyway. Like, our best talent leaves. So we've got an opportunity to have teams in our country or in Europe that have the opportunity to have competition in and around here. Maybe, and okay, players will probably want to still take advantage of the NIL stuff. Let's be honest. That's career, life-changing money some of the better players can earn. So they don't want people to miss out on that. But coming back home and having a chance to play with a chance of going to the NBA can only really be seen as a good thing, potentially. Louis, what are you going to say?
Yeah, so from my perspective, if you look at, well, the president is kind of looking at FIFA, you know, if money from NBA Europe, because it is in collaboration with FIBA, if that money is, as you say, kind of sent to FIBA, you know, if you look at FIFA's kind of egalitarian way of kind of operating, Like, look at how FIFA Nations League, like all the different kind of competitions, etc. How what they run. They really do a good job of kind of raising, like lower countries in kind of developing them. So if that money is sent to FIBA, this has been a terrible way of explaining this, but but if the money is sent to FIBA, and they do a good job of spreading the wealth around, in terms of nations such as ourselves, nations across Europe and etc. Because NBA Europe is projected to probably be a pretty, they want it to be a pretty big deal. If FIBA gets a portion of the money, that could be spread to worldwide development, for various, schemes, etc. So I think if you look at FIFA and the way they send money to various countries, that could be a big positive as long as, they have a good plan for said money. That wasn't very well explained, but there we go.
You need to believe in yourself, Louis. Is it one of these things when we look at NBA Europe, and before we go talk about the cons of it, and before we come back in to talk about the impact on us, like when we look at the way NBA media works in terms of creating stories and narratives, and I suppose that entertainment aspect, which there's pros and cons to. And I know in Britain we've had this debate the last few years all about what Aaron Radin said. But basketball is entertainment. And Matt, you're a content guy. Like you are. We do, and basketball does have that instant reaction. We talk about the amount of people who, like NBA highlights, I barely sit and watch games anymore. More because of the time, and being a dad, late nights just ain't a thing anymore. I used to love a playoff game, staying up late and watched it. But does that to me then make NBA Europe more what's the word I'm thinking of? More connected for me, that I can watch the best players potentially in the world playing time zones better suited. Okay, the top talent always go to the NBA. But does it just make watching this spectacle actually easier for European eyes?
I think so. I think it definitely, obviously the content business debate that you mentioned with Radin was massive, and I'm all for it. The only thing I will say, and I don't know if this is a con, but like, how much EuroLeague do you watch? It's going to be as like their EuroLeague teams plus new sort of sugar daddy team.
multi-billion-dollar enterprises.
So the level of basketball for NBA Europe is going to be EuroLeague level, let's say, positively. Like let's just hope that it's EuroLeague level, right?
Mm-hmm.
EuroLeague's here. It's 70 quid for the season to watch it.
Yours auto-renewed, didn't it?
Yeah. That's how I know. So, like, how many of us actually, we know how good EuroLeague is. We know all the teams and stuff, but do we sit down and watch the whole game? Maybe not. Maybe we do. But, like, having that kind of, having so much content that's just on socials or on YouTube or whatever, keeps you feeling connected with the team without having to watch play by play. And I think that's really good for building basketball fans. And it's having that kind of, enough to know what happened and what, the main sort of stories. It's almost like, I always said that like British basketball needs like a top match of the day type magazine show where it's like, here's all the highlights, here's all the stories going into it. But with such a high turnaround of players in British basketball teams, the more content you can build and the more narrative you can see about, who these players are that come in for a season, maybe two, and then they go, the more you connect with them and the more likely you are to watch more. So I think that's a huge thing. So if they can get that media right, and, the NBA's got a whole machine around it to do that, I think that's a huge plus too.
Because it then, just building on what you've just said there, it becomes that the visibility globally increases with that NBA attachment. The casual fan will maybe tune in more potentially, which then for the NBA results in new brands, new whatever, kind of unlocking that kind of potential, which I suppose when we look at the games this week in Berlin and London, they were marketed as being sold out games. And obviously we see empty spaces happening, people movement, whatever else. People could take a photo at whatever time the seat's empty, yeah. And maybe people buy tickets, don't show up. That always happens as well. The NBA automatically brings that kind of reaction of, I need to get a ticket when it's a one-off game. Louis, go.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is just kind of that the NBA attached to NBA Europe will make it more of a spectacle, will spectacleize it, so to speak. As Matt was saying, they will pump out massive, social media content because they know how to do it. They have the personnel. They can, spread resources from, let's say, the American branch. I was kind of weird way to say it, but they have shared personnel that knows how to do that. But like EuroLeague kind of is missing that kind of level of spectacle, that level of kind of grasping interest. I think a good kind of case study to look at is kind of the B League in Japan, because there was an article where a German kind of like head of federation went to a B League game and he was amazed at the level of kind of attention that kind of game drew, because it's so fun, basically entertainment oriented, not like we have in EuroLeague where it's very much basketball, and B League draws a very good proportion of fans, and they have like a very long season, like 50, 60 games, and they sustained really good capacities, throughout the season. So in terms of creating more entertainment and spectacle per game, that's kind of could be a positive.
And it's always interesting, just when you're saying could that bet spectacle, look when it's like the Serbian teams play each other in EuroLeague, the atmosphere and whatnot. And you've seen it, I think in recent years, teams have tried to capture that and be like, oh, look at the crowd. It's the best crowd in basketball. Like NBA can't do this. So that's a big pro for EuroLeague, I suppose, that the NBA will be trying to capture if they select the right teams. And I think that's where, we're going to move into cons really, really soon. But if NBA gets that right, that's just going to be marketed massively using their powers. Like I look at the game and I like when those games are on, you get a few influencers will be at the game and whatnot. And they're always like a spectacle, things get thrown on the court. The fans are crazy. Like it looks incredible. It'd be amazing to go to see it. Does the NBA's machine and NBA Europe makes that more accessible? Let alone those teams actually aren't even muted on being involved. So I've probably just said a con. Matt Hardy, say something good.
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? Because the whole reason why those fan bases are so passionate is because their dad's dad was that passionate. Do you know what I mean? It's not something you can manufacture. So all these newer teams aren't going to have that. We've all seen sort of videos of sort of American franchise teams in other sports try and replicate a sort of like an ultra experience, but just it looks really forced and it doesn't look natural. And I think it's like if they can keep that sort of authentic, but just shine a bigger light on it and just bring flashier cameras, I think that's great. And I think ultimately, so I know this is the pros, but like cynically, that's what they want to do. Like an NBA just want a slice of that, don't they? To monetize. But it's just like being able to replicate it. I just don't think it's very doable. But for maximizing the eyeballs on that stuff, then they've got more like content capture and sort of production capacity as Disney or Netflix, or do you know what I mean? They can turn it around so quickly. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
Louis Hills, you going to add something?
Maybe. So
maybe I'm going to say something. I may not add, but I'm going to say something.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, so my perspective is it's all dependent on kind of their philosophy in getting in clubs and kind of how they kind of orient themselves in just kind of promoting the product, making sure it's not too, it could be a little bit contradictory to what I just said about Spectacle, but making sure that it's not this kind of clown show, making sure that it still embodies the European kind of pluses, so to speak, like obviously Olympiacos and Panathinaikos, etc. We all know the crowds, as Matt was saying. If they can market that, because that's the plus, that's what they need to capture. The whole thing, that's the massive value add, So
instead of struggling to sell Washington versus Charlotte on a Tuesday night.
Yeah. Or basically. I think a kind of a worrying sign is how they've excluded markets like Lithuania, for example, with Zalgiris. They haven't said anything about the potential Lithuanian team, and obviously they're very well cultured in Europe. Stuff like I can't remember which country, but only one of the traditional powerhouses will only have one NBA Europe team. Stupid. I don't think that those are very good indicators for the direction they're kind of going. But yeah, it's about capturing that value add in terms of what we ought to say about the European game, that passion, that kind of energy. So go on.
So like when we flip it around and think of the negatives towards it, if NBA Europe is so good for basketball, why are so many European basketball people scared of it? Like what is it that people are worried about? Like, does it help the sport? Does it hinder? Are we actually going to see domestic leagues flourish? Does it just take too much attention away from what in Europe sport is sport? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it more? What's the best way to say it? Is NBA Europe like kind of centralizing that power rather than having the benefit for the full ecosystem? Matt Hardy views.
Well, look at American sports, right? The main difference between American sport and British sport, and I don't know how it works with EuroLeague, I think it's sort of somewhere in between, but the main cultural significant difference is meritocracy. If you win enough games, you can get promoted into the top league and have your fighting chance at winning it all. That is an alien concept to the top professional sports leagues in America. And that's why you can build up 60 years of history if you're, the Lakers or whoever. And, that kind of repeatable sort of traditional storytelling can keep going on ad infinitum, right? Whereas I think what British sports specifically, and this is across basketball, football, rugby, all kinds of sports, is like you follow your team and that's what you go for. You don't go for the glitz and the glamour. You want almost like there's a badge of honor where your local team is rubbish, but that's just the hand you've been dealt. And you can't not support them because that's what you do.
But that's because it's all tribalism. Like it's that whole cultural tribalism. Whereas,
exactly. This is why, if you start up a random, this is the beef we have with GBBL, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You can't just decide that a market is ripe for a professional basketball team. So let's build one there because the stats say that this will give us market share and there's a potential capacity and this is our catchment area. It's like, no, you can't just treat basketball fans as numbers on a spreadsheet and just expect the money to come rolling in. You've got to build it slowly and earn it from people. You can't just fast track it as this is just, it's just, this might be a bit heavy, but like this is, it's just capital, it's like trickle down sports. Whereas I feel like the going for like starting community stuff and getting real life tangible interest in a club and building that up through the ranks to then earn the very, very top sort of top level stuff is just more honest, and it's more, that's kind of what we're more used to in the UK.
Louis, what are you going to say?
Europe is opposite to that.
Yeah, so on the closed shop system kind of talk that Matt was kind of delving into, and how it's like alien to Americans. I think a big kind of concern is kind of the level of investment. Because I mean, we're talking about 500 million entry
Just
fee
to get your foot in the door, yeah.
just to get your foot in the door. They will not want to have the threat of relegation. I think there was a discussion on an article about, you know, teams want kind of a closed shop, because I mean, you know, you're not going to want to risk your investment. Basically, it just makes it so that team investors are going to be a lot more kind of protectionist of their own kind of team, and want to not kind of risk rocking the boat, etc. So that's going to be a big concern, kind of basically like the MLS, whether they want to do it like that. But obviously we have closed system in EuroLeague, so that's kind of a toss up. But I think again, like a huge point that like Matt was talking about is kind of the artificiality, and whether, you know, these are natural kind of teams, and, you know, whether you're, let's say, like a team in London, fresh from the ground up, whether you're actually doing kind of the groundwork to build that team. You know, because these, again, 500 million to enter a team, that will require a lot of revenue generation. That will require a lot of like attendances and quick, you know. So basically, you know, you're going to need to get attendances and quick to float that. So, you know, so it's a really tough kind of thing to kind of balance, because,
and there's a lot of talk
yeah.
across Europe at the moment, and I put it in the Discord, and it kind of got met with mixed questions, but football viewing or football TV rights are at an all-time high, and a lot of chat across the market is they can't go any higher. Throw in NBA Europe when
They
they're...
can.
Well, they can, but I don't think people are going to want to pay them. Like, or companies like that's not worth it. Look how often the
Was that a Mick McCarthy reference?
No, that
Sorry.
was a Mick McCarthy meme. Yeah, I'm sorry, that was a Mick McCarthy quote.
Okay, continue.
Wow. Just been Mick McCarthy. But like, basketball in Europe's not like transactional almost, that kind of buying and selling and needing bums on seats. We all need bums and seats across Europe. And a lot of Europe is like local wealthy people put their money in their local team because that's what their family business has always done. We see that across Europe constantly. You hear of stories where players don't get paid. I'm going to give it, this is almost a pro for the NBA Europe. But Europe's got so settled in its way that, and I can see why it's a fear for a lot of people. It's people's lives, people's whatever. NBA Europe's fresh. Like, we're saying that the what's the right way to say, the 12 kind of locked in teams being in Athens, or big city teams, Athens, Istanbul, Paris, Lyon, Munich, Berlin, Rome, Milan, Madrid, Barcelona, London, Manchester. But none of those teams are actually locked in who are currently established. You're having to launch, like, it's just what Matt said about the whole GBBL stuff for us. It was like that, your whole launching teams instantly into whatever. Like Alba Berlin, like a few years ago, I went to Alba Berlin versus Bayern Munich in German BBL. It was, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of what goes on in the arena and entertainment and whatnot, an NBA level production. The Germans do it really well. We could learn a lot from German basketball, and we'll probably touch on that later. But like all that, like Rome, there's a lot of debate in Italy about which team's actually going to want to take it. Or there's a lot of people in Italy saying, no, it's not going to happen. We've got reports 1 minute that it's Man United, then it's Manchester City, and now all of a sudden it's Manchester Basketball, and whether or not that's just good PR placement by Ben Pearson / the Sherwood Group to show, well, don't forget about us. But even the whole London question's gone quiet. Is it going to be the Lions with the Lithuanian money? It's maybe not. Are they going to try and get Arsenal? Seems to be the one that I hear mostly linked to it. But all these big players, like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, was invited to speak at stuff, which I just find freaking mental. Matt, you put your finger up before I go on another tangent. Go.
This is possibly tangential.
Tangential?
Would it's a word. Look it up.
I love it.
It's would Zalgiris want to put London in the NBA Europe project, having been snubbed as an NBA Europe city themselves as their main team, you know? Or would they I don't know, it just feels a bit weird.
Or 4D chess, they knew they weren't going to get into NBA Europe through Zalgiris, so they invested in London.
And that's where the whole new basketball arena is coming in, because they probably know that the O2 won't be able to get the dates for the fixtures and whatnot as much, so they'll have a basketball-specific arena.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, if we're not going to
Lens
be
Balance playing 6D chess. Hashtag call the London mascot Lenzy.
I need to say something. As you were saying about O2, like, again, to circle back on the investment risk and kind of the threat to NBA, well, to Europe, practically speaking, you know, because if teams can't sustain these capacities that are needed to kind of justify £500 million investment, you know, and like, what does this mean for these clubs? You know, for these, like, thinking down the line, obviously it's not going to happen in 1 or 2 years. But what if we lose like the entire top crust of Europe if this venture fails? You know, that's a big question. Sort of,
because like almost it's that. Where do you build your house? Are you building it with solid foundations? Are we trying to build it on sand? It's going to constantly be moving. Like, are we building the penthouse before we build the actual foundations? Like, it feels that like NBA. When I look at the NBA and I think of what they do in their, like, you see what they do in their communities. Like, NBA cares. You got the players going in and doing whatever else. Like, they do a lot of stuff. How quickly can they? I mean, it probably varies the answer. How quickly can they get the NBA engine rolling to get in those communities? And like, genuinely, like, it's like the amount of articles across all sorts of media platforms, all the local, like, not local, national press, BBC, Sky Sports, Press Association, every engine was running. I would love to hear, and we're never going to hear, like, we won't, what discussions are having between, like, Barcelona coming out and saying, nah, signing a new 10-year deal with EuroLeague. That's massive for EuroLeague. EuroLeague need to get better. And I think, is it Monty Yunus? No, who is it? Is it the name of the guy who's running EuroLeague has just gone out of my head. I think it's Monty. Anyway, they talk about increasing the standards of EuroLeague and understanding what they've got to do. But when we look at teams in the UK, will London move the needle? And the skeptical view in the NBA, is NBA Europe only? I was right about Montinez. Yes, well done, you're at the back. The needle moving on NBA are doing this because they're falling so far behind NFL, which you could also say is transactional with the amount of games they're now playing across UK. They played Dublin this year, didn't they? And Germany. That's a lot of games to move. But NFL season is so short. The NBA season is so large that realistically the only two markets, and this is what you read online, the only two markets realistically that the NBA can tap into pretty quickly and move the needle is move a team back to Seattle and Vegas. And it's almost as if they used NBA Africa as a, let's do this as a wee trial, see how this goes, and we'll try and get into Asia. We'll try and get into Europe. Because the needle moves if you get Real Madrid. The needle moves if you get money coming in from Saudi, money coming in from Qatar, these kind of places, Bahrain. Do you know what I mean? The needle moves if these people are going to invest in Real Madrid basketball, Barcelona basketball, massive global brands. That's why they want the football. Let's be honest. That's why they want PSG involved. That's why they want the Turkish team, the Italian team, a couple of German teams, because it moves the potential needle in terms of that revenue that the NBA has. But then we're saying about what does that do for global basketball? Potentially shrinks everything else underneath it. Potentially. Louis Hills, go. Don't know why I'm full naming you.
Yeah, so my feeling is that it's kind of like a form of economic imperialism, to kind of go far out. But
some of the words, I feel like I need to, when we have these words, I want to put dictionary definitions.
Yeah, put it on the top. But basically,
Imperialisms. Wow.
economic imperialism.
Economical. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue. Sorry.
So to get actually into the point, basically, obviously, with the way that the sports market is kind of going, you know, with kind of football, etc., being a massive player, basically, with the kind of unique circumstances of basketball, kind of as this kind of basically second sport with a lot of kind of good worldwide spread. Because as you say, Japan's got a huge league, Europe's massive. Like American football can't say that, you know. So basically, it's kind of a big opportunity for NBA to, you know, basically domineer like the global market, practically speaking, because it's, as you say, it's putting all of, well, the top players in Europe under their banner. A thing that we've kind of seen recently is the NBA app putting a lot of international leagues in their NBA TV deal. So what this could mean is kind of a play to create this huge Netflix, basically the Netflixification of basketball, practically speaking. It's kind of like this entertainment play that can kind of compete with Netflix. It's basically like this opportunistic kind of run to kind of compete against these big like international entertainment products by having this control on a big scale, practically speaking.
So is this one of these situations where basketball can't afford to stand still whilst the world moves on, or can basketball can't afford to lose its soul chasing that scale?
Yeah, I think I like what Lou was sort of alluding to, where it's sort of it's they're backing themselves to be the world's second sport. Do you know what I mean? So like behind football, so football is the most widely played sport or whatever it is, or like is the most popular among the most countries or whatever. Basketball's probably second. You've got outliers like cricket and stuff, which is huge in India, for example, which has 1.5 billion people. So that skews the numbers. But in terms of like most widely played over the most amount of countries, it could, you know, it's up there. So yeah, this is the NBA's way of owning basketball. It's kind of just collecting leagues like Infinity Stones. And if, you know, what'll happen is they'll kind of, it's almost like a big tech bro company kind of, you know, or like a tech startup starting up a little starting an app, then Google comes in and buys it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So NBA Europe starts this big league. EuroLeague then gets all of its value taken away. EuroLeague teams aren't profitable anyway. So then the NBA can go, all right, well, we'll buy EuroLeague and we'll take it off your hands. They can stuff it into the NBA app as a secondary channel almost, and then make money off EuroLeague and make money off NBA Europe and make money off NBA, and they're all just making money.
Simple as that. So the big question
monopolization, basketball monopolization.
Just another big word.
Trying to get it in there.
Yeah. So if Real Madrid joins NBA Europe, does the argument just end? Because NBA Europe will happen when or if Real Madrid moves, because they're the big brand across Europe in terms of football as well. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is that where, like, Barcelona putting the pressure on? Is it 3 teams still on to decide on their EuroLeague future? Is it the Turkish team, Tony Parker's team, and Real Madrid still to confirm? I think that's right.
Yeah, I think kind of signs are saying that as well, when looking likely. Turkey is kind of like Galatasaray or Fenerbahce. So yeah, just continue.
Yeah. So it's almost like they're waiting. I think those teams are waiting to see what Real Madrid do, because does EuroLeague fall up to bits without Real Madrid?
Well, they need one of these big teams, because if they don't have,
and then
any
does
of them,
NBA Europe need? Yeah. Does NBA Europe need the credibility of having a Real Madrid before having new teams across Germany, Italy, potentially, Greece, potentially, and obviously here in the UK. Because let's be honest, that's what they need, that credibility of Real Madrid.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So that just adds to the legitimacy of it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because they need to convince these teams. If they don't have a team like Real Madrid to kind of create this air of legitimacy, then they can't get the other teams, practically speaking. It's the first domino.
And is it then the end domino? Because I think every other team in EuroLeague will try and follow suit.
Well, I feel like so Barcelona, like you said, have kind of stuck their flag in. They've picked a side, haven't they?
Yeah.
Really, with that 10-year EuroLeague license. So I think it's all like, it's a tricky one. I think the NBA securing Real Madrid helps American-based fans understand NBA Europe, because the Real Madrid as a brand is global and they'll understand it. And even if you've never seen a lick of EuroLeague in your life, you know what Real Madrid is, even if it's just through, that's who Ronaldo used to play for. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you could argue that Real Madrid is like the most important team of any of them, even like, whoever the best the best teams, like even if like a Monaco or whoever, like really successful EuroLeague teams, because they haven't got that global brand. That's more key to having NBA Europe not only be successful in Europe, but get American eyeballs on it too.
Let's talk about it in terms of our league here, the SLB. We've done our best to stay off that so far, and this could go in any way. The best news for the SLB, though, regardless of what happened, is FIBA's recognition of our league. It means that the SLB is at the table in terms of ongoing discussions. What we have known for a while is that whatever the NBA teams are, if that happens, they will play in our domestic league in some shape and form. We know that. We've known that for a while. How does NBA Europe actually impact our league? Will it be good? Will it be bad? Do we have a situation where we're in a massive round of unknown? Yes, easy answer to say. But actually, because our ecosystem of basketball in terms of fan base, whatever else, being smaller, is NBA Europe better for the UK than it is potentially for basketball powerhouses across Europe? Because people in the NBA Europe, they bring in, I'm sure I've seen a stat about how much merch sales in the UK the NBA does. That's part of it. Get a hat, t-shirt, hoodie, vest, whatever. Does that work better in the UK than it will potentially do in Spain, Germany, any of the other nations? Thoughts on that?
I don't know, because you still need to have that affinity. No one's going to be, because it's British people wear NBA jerseys because of the sheen of the brand on the front of it. You're not going to get a guy in London, a guy in Bristol wearing a Manchester jersey, I think, if they don't follow that team, because it's like, it's just because it's just normal to us. It's not some sort of.
Is that why do you think NBA works? Because, I mean, you're a Nets guy, I'm a Cavs guy, Louis I don't know what NBA team Louis follows. He's just a basketball guy. Man. He's just Kazakhstan Division 8 guy. But you know what I mean? Like,
bingo.
Why am I a Cavs guy? I mean, I could say because of the original when LeBron was drafted and LeBron brought me to the game. I've just then kept that team. You could say my NFL team's the New York Giants. Why? Because the first Super Bowl I stayed up for is when I was a kid. They won. And I was like, yes, Giants. They're going to be my team. Go. What are you going to say?
But British basketball fans need a poetic or theatrical reason to follow a certain American team. Unless we've got family there, we need some special reason, right? That doesn't work in Britain, because it's all tribal. It's all location based. If you're like, if you win a school, it's like, oh, what football team do you support? Everyone either supports in my era, everyone supported Man United, and they were glory hunters because unless you're from Manchester, then you were a glory supporter, and it's a bit weird that you don't support your local. I think that gets I don't think you're gonna get, and even if you were a diehard NBA fan and NBA Europe came to the UK, unless you lived in or around London or Manchester, I don't think you'd be getting around in a Manchester jersey or a London jersey.
Okay, so frame it away. Sorry, Lou, 2 seconds. We frame it away from that point of view. Any NBA Europe's effect on the SLB? How does the SLB or the domestic game here work with them in our league? Does it actually bring more eyes to our league? Does it potentially bring more investment and revenue? Because people would people go, Gladiators are playing London in NBA London. Will that sell more tickets? Do they then have the eyes of NBA Europe and whatever else watching that? Like, to me, it feels, and I think this is where I sway in what my overall thoughts are in NBA Europe. And I actually I believe that it moves the needle for the SLB more than it might do in more established markets because of that potential. Like, you look at the current ownership of the SLB and the amount it's changed in recent years. And we're yet to see if potentially for the better, let's be honest, with all the changes over the last few years, we're yet to see what the domestic game in this country can do now with stronger owners or more wealthy owners, let's be honest. And it's not just the 777 lines, if you know what I mean. But does that bring more eyes to our domestic game that someone in Cincinnati will go, you know what? NBA London are playing Cheshire or Liverpool. That's NBA Manchester playing Liverpool. That's quite a big derby game locally. Let's watch that. Does it bring them more eyes to Liverpool? Does Liverpool then get more investment? Does Liverpool... Do you know what I mean? Like, does it actually help level up our game? Louis, go.
Yeah, from my perspective, it can be summed up as, practically speaking, 2 new teams with £500 million worth of investment into it.
But that's just to get your foot in NBA Europe. So you've actually got to spend...
So that's to get your foot in to get into NBA Europe. But that requires a huge level of investment. And in terms of like the domestic game, that's, 2 new basically EuroLeague level teams being entered into the British market immediately. So from that level, that sense, immediately that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So from my perspective, that's definitely a good thing, and will create a better playing product, and as you say, in terms of, because NBA Europe teams will definitely raise a level of attention that wouldn't come otherwise, I believe. Whether that's enough to actually sustain NBA Europe franchises is another question.
Yeah.
But the question is how it improves the British game. And I believe that it will, raise a level of attention that I think the SLB's been desperately looking for recently, in terms of engagement, as Matt said, like countless times, in terms of just making it more entertaining to watch and easy to follow, etc. But yeah, I do think that, let's say, I mean, will it be in the hundreds of thousands? No, probably not. But it will create more people watching, let's say, like Caledonia versus NBA London team. It will probably create more ticket sales. So, like, people will want to watch that locally. Like if it's in Caledonia or East Kilbride, sorry. If it's in East Kilbride, people will want to watch that, so that will raise ticket prices, etc. But yeah, I'm just rambling, so go on.
I think what we've got to remember is the only televised stuff to NBA Europe audiences will be the NBA Europe teams versus the NBA Europe teams, right? So it's not like we're going to get any more eyes from the NBA Europe fans of the domestic league stuff. Like, you're not going to watch Bayern Munich versus a German team that's not in Euroleague. Do you know what I mean? But you'll watch the Euroleague fixtures in between that. So I'm not sure how trickle down it is. And that's why, even, I'm not too kind of in favor, but I think that's kind of the whole stumbling block of the football Super League thing happened, right? They tried to basically ring fence decent teams that would play each other for loads of money, but it just kind of got shafted off because it I don't know, it just felt a bit weird. So I'm not sure that I don't know, but I find it hard to. It's all about how they also spend that money. You'd have thought that if you're spending 500 million to get into NBA Europe, your focus will be NBA Europe and making that a success. I don't know what else that money brings to better the SLB. And I also think it has a potential that anyone that is half decent in the UK, development-wise and pathway-wise, will get hoovered up by either Manchester or London and either fed out to a different NBA Europe team or a different NBA team or G League team or whatever it might be. And everyone that doesn't go to college in the States will get, it's just hoovered up by the Northern powerhouse or the Southern powerhouse in the UK. And it's just going to dilute the sort of national basketball stocks of sort of home-based players. I think that's going to suck as well. So it's kind of, or like they'll have, and Lou is way more qualified to talk about this than I am, but like you have thought that Manchester and London NBA teams will have scouts and stuff, and they might be able to pick out these people and filter them out early and all this kind of stuff. So maybe having those two is bad because it just hoovers up every existing person that would have potentially gone into an SLB pathway. So
to create a debate. I do believe that because of the increased level of fans in, let's say, NBA Europe team in London, I do believe there will be some sort of kind of generalized increase in like consistent SLB support, because what we have now is a lot of families, not a lot of people kind of consistently watching the SLB. Obviously, I know what you're saying. NBA Europe fans are going to be watching, London versus. Sorry. But I do believe that kind of domestic people, if you kind of see like the lines, then how they're kind of engaging in the league more. I do believe there will be more kind of dedicated fans kind of through osmosis of these teams, because I mean they are massively invested in teams that are an addition to the team, to the league in totality, not just like shunting in, not just converting London Lions into an NBA Europe team. They are two new teams with a lot more investment to counterbalance that, basically. But I do get what you say.
Do you think they might do like if you're an NBA London team or an NBA Manchester team, you'd do like all the NBA Europe fixtures are 45 quid to get in, but the SLB games are like buy one get one free for a $5. Is it going to create some sort of like 2-tier competition system where even all their good, like, might get to a stage where all their good players are rested for the SLB games and kept for the NBA Europe games? So again, you've got they need to get even more homegrown players that need to do all the kind of pass all the rules to play domestically. So that's, again, you could just less roster spots for everyone else.
I think it's a fantastic debate. I just checked how long we've been talking for, 54 minutes on this, and it's absolutely breezed by. Like, I think that's it. It's still so many questions to be answered remained. It's one of these ones we've tried to think of different things from both sides, but also the fact that Real Madrid will have, but also like then the potential positive, but also negative impact it could have within the SLB. It's a lot of unknowns to have. I've reached out to a few teams to try and see if we can get coaches, players, maybe a couple owners on, league people as well, because it'd be fascinating to gain insight from around our game. Like, we're reading a lot of stuff from people quoting, I said, Dirk Nowitzki, you're seeing things from Pau Gasol, Steve Nash, the NBA engine's kind of been out. You've seen the quotes from Italy, from Spain and whatnot. But because we don't have an established like audience as such, like the fact that Manchester, and it's potentially been this week, it was City AM, I think, had that kind of report about it not being City, United, they've turned around, but actually Manchester basketball have kind of just thrown, like they're the ones being like, no, we represent basketball in this city. We can connect the two colours of Manchester. I'm not sure how Manchester folk describe their teams as such in terms of that. But is this where, like, if it is Manchester basketball as we know it, is that then actually a positive for our game because we're seeing that growth from within? Like, we're not needing a Pau Gasol, a Dirk Nowitzki to tell us. We can associate as fans of British basketball that actually Manchester basketball's come out of the ashes of a city that's got good connections to basketball, historic connections to basketball, that Manchester could be the flag in the ground that people across our league or sport can connect to better?
I think it all kind of depends on if that were to happen, and the basketballs are an NBA Europe club. There's two ways it could go. They could either be like, cool, well, we're primarily an SLB team and we play in NBA Europe, so we're gonna kind of almost bring SLB along for the ride with on that journey and kind of bring it all up. Or it might go, all right, peace out, see you later. Like, we've got a seat at the cool table now.
Yeah.
So see you later, SLB. It's been emotional. Thanks for everything, but we're going to go be mates with Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Tony Barker. So yeah, it all depends on that, really, I think, for me.
Yeah, from my perspective, like, hearing that news for some reason kind of made me more excited about NBA Europe project, as I've been kind of a little bit
skeptical, cynical.
A little bit. I'm always skeptical, though. I'm always skeptical. But just kind of the knowledge in kind of basketball application that they kind of have and accrued like 2 years of know-how in working in the domestic market. Obviously, how, it is currently an SLB team. They won't be this NBA Europe. It won't be Manchester United looking at SLB and going, what the hell is this? I don't care about this. So they will have a level of interest in the SLB. And, we do have, let's just get into the ownership. The ownership, there's connections with ownership and kind of intrinsically in the SLB. Let's just say that. So there's that factor, but also kind of like the kind of inclinations Manchester basketball have shown in terms of the Manchester Pro-Am, for example. Like some of these dunk contests with kind of like these Xavier and college kind of youth kind of Manchester products, stuff like that I find really cool. So I just find that to kind of be a positive kind of sign for NBA Europe, so to speak. So,
and I also think, like, when you look at Manchester, they've got that connection to North American basketball anyway with the stuff they've done in the CBL and throughout Canada. And you've got to say that's another connection to it. I'm always just curious, being like, where does it then fit in the matrix, like, of sport? Where does NBA Europe, okay, the SLB would then filter underneath that. Obviously, it would be seen as the NBA is the top tier. Does NBA Europe go above the G League? It would have to, surely.
You'd hope so, because they're fully professional. Whereas, I know G League get paid to play, but it's very much a, it used to be called the D League, right? The Development League. So it's like it's a Stasham type of league where you kind of buy the rights to people while they're still developing.
But then is that not what NBA teams potentially do with NBA Europe teams? They do you know what I mean? Like it's.
I think.
Okay,
I
Louis,
think you're
go.
going into some really interesting questions, because how will they kind of prioritize NBA G League with NBA?
Because
Europe?
then how will fans look at that? Imagine you're a Real Madrid fan and your top Spanish player's been pinched up the ladder because the draft rights are held. I mean, that happens anyway. We've seen that.
Or their top players on the two-way.
Yeah. Like I suppose that's going to be big conversations. And how much does that upset? I'm using Real Madrid. The Real Madrid massive. The Crown Prince of Spain, sorry, is upset because his player's been pinched. Do you know what I mean? And that's where you look at in the SLB, Manchester. Like, how much is it going to be player pinching? Like, going from that and talking about the movie Semi Pro, when when the Tropics lose their best player because the Spurs want them for coffee black. You mean, like, is it going to be that type of situation, like where Manchester all of a sudden are hoovering up, like in their inaugural season NBA Europe, they're just using their knowledge of the SLB and hoovering up players from every team in the SLB? Like, is it going to be that type of situation? And I suppose we see that happening in, I suppose the Gladiators have kind of done that in the women's game by hoovering up some like Tierra Hodges and Annie Warren, like two of the best players last season now in their team, and the Gladiators are top of the table. Like, are we going to be in that kind of situation where Manchester use this income and opportunity, shop locally, take the talent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's then getting a shot to a chance to showcase them to an even bigger audience. Like, it's interesting to see how the matrix of it all and whatever opens up. Is it going to be good for basketball as a whole? Like, is there then a proper pyramid effect? But then if you throw in NBA money to Real Madrid and give them a chance, if they win NBA Europe, are we having a basketball Champions Cup or whatever else? And you're going to see if it's OKC winning the NBA playoffs, are they playing against Real Madrid in a cross-continent tournament? Do you know what I mean? Like, are we
€700 a ticket? Yeah, probably. That's the thing that I'm petrified about.
I love it.
We had NBA London this week. And if that's the goal, if that's the end game, where you can't get a ticket for love nor money unless you want to pay resale, or like you're in the nosebleeds for 75 quid, or you're paying literally, you're writing a blank check for courtside. I don't want that. I don't for a regular season game. I understand it's an exhibition, it's a one-off, but like, if that's what we're, if even Premier League pricing for football, it gets stupid and it prices out normal people that want to come and support and watch this game. So,
does that then, just for debate point of view, push people down to maybe go watch BCB, or do you know what I mean? Like, does that actually funnel people into more basketball?
I don't know, because if you're there for the content and you're there for that team, I'm not gonna. If I'm, if you're a Man City fan and you can't afford the however much it is, you're not going to go see a local, like, I don't know, Salford United. Do you know what I mean? Like the League Two version, because it's not the same. Yeah. It's not the same team. It's the same sport. It's the same rules, but like, it's just not the same. So I worry about it's rapid commercialization of basketball, and it's just something I'm very wary of.
All right, final remarks in terms of in terms of like from what we've all talked about, we're very much three skeptical, cynical individuals. But in terms of final remarks, when it comes to the SLB, we are all in agreement it's a positive that FIBA have recognised this, so we're in the conversation regardless what happens, and that's a good thing. It's really interesting kind of dynamic to see that, after all, Manchester basketball being spoken about as being involved in stuff. Like that to me is, as I think I agree with Louis in that, like that's quite an exciting dynamic to it that hadn't actually been spoken about yet. And I suppose as hardy Brits, you're always that negative view on, oh well, change. We don't like change. So it's going to be really interesting to see how things are played out. Who gets the London franchise? To me, that's a big thing. Probably bigger than the Manchester question, I think. Like, will London, they want to obviously connect to the football setup because that's what the NBA want. Like, to me, that's the big question. What is NBA London going to be? Like, are they just going to be called London whatever, for example? Manchester basketball, Manchester not, like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's a different connotation there between London and Manchester. Like, I very much am intrigued to see what happens and what it means for the dynamics across our sport here in the UK. Like, we plan to talk about more than just this subject tonight, but it's obviously such a topical conversation that we've gone on. So we'll save what we talked about, what we're going to talk about in terms of future British basketball. And there's some questions along about professionalising, how British basketball can profit more. So the NBA question to that, I'm curious to see, does that attract more eyes to our game domestically? Does that bring more revenues, some more investment into our game here that the game needs? That I've seen Sam Neater say about he wants to get rid of mugger courts. I agree, I'd love to get rid of them. Do you know what I mean? But that's that bottom end thing conversation to this. Does that actually help? So yeah, Matt, give me your kind of final take.
I want NBA Europe to work. I want really cool top level basketball that's all singing, all dancing, content machine, really cool day out basketball to happen in the UK. I don't want it to happen at the expense of the SLB. I don't want it to happen at the expense of British basketball fans having to pay way too much out of pocket. And I don't want it to happen at to make the SLB a kind of afterthought after this ring-fenced pay-to-play $500 million buy-in for corporates. I don't want the soul to be sucked out of basketball for some money. So I'm on the fence, annoyingly, but gives us something to talk about, doesn't it?
Louis.
Yeah, basically as nuanced as Matt was, basically, I really do believe that this level of investment can be an extremely positive thing in terms of kind of just massively professionalizing our sport, creating more jobs, creating more of a pathway for kind of kids, because we don't really have those professional pathways unless you're sorry, basically at the moment. So that could be very exciting. But again, nuance, we need it not to be in expense of our league, in expense of the common fans. We don't want it to be some kind of like bougie, like Premier League game where it's 700 quid a ticket or something like that. We want it to be like an actual product, actual basketball fans can enjoy. But yeah, basically it.
I think that'll do for this evening. It's, I suppose NBA Europe isn't good or bad. We don't know yet. Like, it's going to be totally indifferent. There's so many thoughts and feelings and whatnot. The impact on our game could be huge, could be minimal. Like, we don't really know. I think as long as British basketball is kind of part of the kind of structure, it could have an opportunity for growth. And I suppose at the end of the day, that's all fans of this is going to be. Because I suppose if British basketball, SLB or whatever is left on the outside, that's a huge warning sign. Let's be honest. So let's just hope SLB keep being in part of the conversation, because that, at the end of the day, SLB show, let's hope the SLB stays as part of the conversation. It's absolutely brilliant to hear at least Manchester throwing their name into the hat, because it keeps our league and our sport in this country a little bit relevant, which is exciting. And do you know what I mean? It gives us a little bit of control to it. It's not just us throwing our hat into the money man of the NBA and saying, take our souls, which might be quite good. It might be. All right. So this will do for this week's episode of SLB Show. Sorry, it's for a couple of days late. This will hopefully you enjoy the listen. Get involved in the conversation across our platforms. Don't forget to subscribe across YouTube and give us a follow on Instagram and X as well. So thanks to Matt and Louis. My name's Grant, and we'll be back next week for probably a bit more topical SLB discussion.